Hello and welcome to Antiquarians Anonymous. In this video today I'm going to explore with you a sacred object in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, an icon on Mount Athos in Greece. I'm going to relate to you the traditions associated with this icon and ask some questions about its origins and what that might tell us about the authenticity and the function of holy icons. It is a really fascinating object with a compelling and beautiful backstory. And I do hope. The Byzantine Empire is of course long gone, but one place on earth that can still claim in some respects to be the final outpost of Byzantium is the peninsula surrounding Mount Athos in northeastern Greece. Athos is an extraordinary place. It is a monastic republic dedicated to the Mother of God and known as the Garden of the Theotokos. By tradition, the Virgin Mary was on a voyage with St. John the Theologian to visit St. Lazarus of Bethany, who was then a bishop on Cyprus. Unexpectedly, the weather changed, the ship had to alter course, and she found herself on the coast of the Athos Peninsula. Tradition relates that Mary walked ashore on Athos and was taken by the staggering beauty of the place, so much so that she prayed to her son that it might become her garden. A voice from heaven was heard saying, "Let this place be your inheritance and your garden, a paradise and a haven of salvation for those seeking to be saved." Numerous monasteries were established here during the time of the Byzantine Empire, particularly during the 10th century. And in recent years, Athos has been greatly revived with an influx of young men from many Orthodox countries and backgrounds seeking a dedicated monastic life there. And the monasteries there are a powerhouse of prayer for the Orthodox Church and for the world. As you might expect, Athos has many icons of Mary, the Theotokos, the Mother of God. And given the longevity and depth of the tradition on Athos, some of these are among the most ancient icons to survive, and many have fascinating legends and miracles associated with them. In this video, I'm going to look at just one, the icon called Axion Estin, or Caryatissa, which is perhaps the most significant of them all. An icon of the Mother of God that is considered to be the protectress of the monastic communities of Mount Athos and its most valuable possession. The icon of Axion Estin, or Caryatissa, is now kept in the Prototon, the 9th and 10th century Catholicon dedicated to the Dormition of the Mother of God in Carius, the administrative centre of Athos. The Prototon is so called as it is the seat of the Protos of Athos, the head of government of this autonomous monastic republic. The icon is generally kept in the altar beyond the iconostasis of the church at the Synthronon, the high place, the seats for the Protos and the clergy that are directly behind the Holy Table. Occasionally, it is brought out for veneration by the faithful and is taken in procession once a year on Bright Monday, the Monday following Pascha, around Carius and its many monastic cells. By tradition, the icon didn't start out in such an important building. Originally, it was said to have been the image of the Mother of God placed in the chapel of a tiny hermitage situated a mile or so north of Carius. This hermitage, which is now called Axion Estin, like the icon, is believed to have been founded around the year 930, just at the time that monasticism is really getting established on Athos. By tradition, the icon was brought to the Prototon due to a significant event that occurred in front of it very soon after the cell was founded, an event that gave its name to the cell and to the icon. The tradition is this. My account here of what occurred is taken from the earliest written source we have of it, by hieromonk Seraphim Thinolus, who was the Protos of Athos in the year 1548, and would have known the icon well. According to his account, the cell was inhabited in the mid-10th century by a single elder and his younger disciple. One day the elder decided he would go to Carriers for the Sunday all-night vigil, leaving behind his disciple, who was instructed to continue the services in the chapel of the cell on his own. As night fell, there was a knock on the door, and on opening it, the brother found himself face to face with a stranger, someone dressed in a monastic habit. This stranger monk joined the brother to sing the vigil services in the chapel. Now, during Compline, or night prayer, the two of them were stood before the icon of the Theotokos, and they started to sing together the great canon in her honour. Now, as the canon comes to an end, there is a point where a hymn is sung in Mary's honour. More honourable than the cherubim and more glorious beyond compare than the seraphim, thou who without corruption bearest God the Word, and art truly Theotokos, thee do we magnify. It is a hymn that is said to be composed by St. Cosmos the Melodist in the 8th century. Now, the stranger monk takes his turn to repeat the hymn, and rather than following the standard text, he introduces it with some words of his own invention that were not part of the existing tradition. And he sings this: It is truly meet to bless thee, the Theotokos, the ever-blessed and all-immaculate and mother of our God, before carrying on with the usual refrain. Axion estin means it is truly meet. Now the brother was astounded by what he heard and the unearthly and angelic quality of the singing of the stranger monk, and he asks him to write down the words he has sung. He didn't have a pen and paper in the cell, so the stranger asks him to hand him a stone tile. And the tradition says that the stranger monk miraculously writes the words onto the tile with his finger, and then says to the brother, henceforth and forever, sing in this manner, you and all Orthodox Christians. And then he promptly disappears. The brother commits the words and melody to memory and repeats it to the elder when he returns home. The monks of the Holy Mountain, after some discussion, come to the conclusion that the mysterious stranger monk is in fact the angel Gabriel. The stone tile with the inscription on it was taken to Constantinople in the late 980s or early 990s and was given to the emperor, giving an approximate date to this event, while the icon was moved to the Prototon in Carriers, where it remains. The hymn Axion Estin has become part of the Orthodox liturgical tradition, and it is sung at Compline still. Be most familiar to Orthodox Christians as part of the Divine Liturgy, where it is sung directly at the end of the anaphora of St. John Chrysostom as a Megalonarion, a hymn of magnification. This tradition and the adoption of this wonderful hymn of praise to Mary into the formal worship of the Church invests this icon in Carriers with a very special meaning and spiritual power that still endures to this day. So what of the icon itself as an artifact? What evidence is there art historically from it that helps paint a broader picture of its history? Well, firstly, how it is seen and presented today to pilgrims is not as it would have been seen originally when first painted. Like many important icons, it is encased in a ritza, a silver gilt protective cover, which dates from the 18th or 19th century. All that is seen of the painted icon itself are the faces of Mary and of Christ. If you take away the ritza, there is a well-preserved painted icon below. And it's an unusual image, and if one can make a qualitative value judgment, it is rather a naive image of the Virgin Mary and the Christ child. Mary has a somewhat mournful expression, as though anticipating the pain of her son's passion. And the figure of the Christ child is quite unique and remarkable. He is a very heavy-set infant with an astonishing musculature. Although I'm an Orthodox deacon, I can't suspend my Western art historical faculties when faced with an icon of historical importance, however spiritually charged that icon might be. The first thing that strikes me as an art historian about this particular icon is the primitiveness of the painting. Now, I've read that the icon is believed by many to have been painted in Byzantium before the Great Iconoclasm. That is highly unlikely in the extreme. There are a few icons dating from before the Iconoclasm. There is nothing stylistically to suggest this dates from that period. Given the primitiveness of the icon, I find it difficult to believe that it was produced in Byzantium at all, at the centre of artistic sophistication. My view is probably that the icon was painted on Athos, and is an attempt by a reasonably skilled but not first-rate iconographer to produce an icon from a Byzantine prototype. What date might the icon be? It is almost certainly among the earliest icons on Athos, and maybe among the dozen or so earliest icons of the Mother of God to survive. But is it 10th century? Stylistically, it doesn't appear to be that early. A recent analysis of the icon after conservation in 1999 has suggested that the primary paint layer of the icon dates from around 1300. A direct prototype of this icon from before 1300 doesn't survive, but there are icons that are of a comparable type. The icon is of a class of images of the Mother of God that in the later medieval period came to be known as the Panhagia Eleusa. Panhagia meaning most holy, and Eleusa meaning tenderness. This describes the pose of Mary. This is a tender image of Mary lifting her son and holding his face closely to her own. There is a subtype of this icon, the Panhagia Kikotissa, which reflects the pose of the Axios Est in Iconomus exactly. This is a type of icon that is common in Cyprus, and there are numerous versions of it on the island, all dating from the mid-14th century onwards. At Kalopanagiottis in northwest Cyprus, there is a Kikotissa which came from the monastery of St. John Lampedistis, which is very similar in form indeed. I can't find any that resemble this icon completely, particularly the depiction of the rather thick-set and muscly figure of Christ. Perhaps the icon Axion Estis on Athos is the prototype for the later icons of the Panhagia Kikotissa found in Cyprus. If the icon dates from the first years of the 14th century, as the recent analysis suggests, it does beg the question how the story of Axion Estin fits in with that chronology, if it fits in at all. In the contemporary art historical world, where provenance is everything, the value of a work of art is often determined in a somewhat black and white manner. A painting is either genuine or it's fake. To the Church, the value of an icon isn't conferred through simply authenticity and materiality. Images painted with egg tempera on wooden boards do not last forever, and the complete renewal of icons is common in the Orthodox world. An icon could be completely covered with a new paint layer, or layers, and still be the same icon and still have the same spiritual value. As an example of that, let's take two well-known Russian icons, the Mother of God of Vladimir and the image of the Hospitality of Abraham by Andrei Rublev. Now, the Mother of God of Vladimir is a miraculous icon of national importance to the people of Russia. When it was examined in the 20th century by the Bolsheviks, it was found to have 5 layers of overpaint on it, with only the face of Mary and of Christ remaining from the earliest paint layer of the 12th century. Even parts of the gesso ground below the paint had been replaced before repainting. St. Andrei Rublev's famous icon of the Hospitality of Abraham, originally painted in the first years of the 15th century, looked very different before 1918 than it does today. It too was renewed, repainted 4 or 5 times in its history. In 1918, the controversial decision was made to remove much of the overpainting to pull the icon back to Rublev's authentic layer. And it was not a complete success, as much of Rublev's original paint had gone, and now the underpainting shows through. The delicate transparency and subtle colouring of the icon as we see it now is part of its charm to us today, but it is not what Rublev intended. If these 2 icons can be renewed 5 times in 500 years, it is likely that the same process of repainting and renewal occurred with the Axion Estin icon, and that it was renewed in 1300 or even copied afresh from a prototype. In Orthodox tradition, the symbolic and theological meaning of an icon is expressed just as abundantly through a copy as in a prototype. An icon renewed or copied afresh from an earlier prototype has an authenticity because it still carries within it all its essence, value, and meaning. Regardless of the origins of the present Axion Estin icon, it expresses the reality of Orthodox spiritual experience. It connects those who venerate it to the archetype of the icon, in this case the Mother of God, and that is its primary value. It also expresses too that the hymnody of the Church flows out of a deep wellspring of inspiration, holy tradition, of which the icons are an important and an integral part. Thanks very much for watching.